I started doing environmental justice organizing, started realizing that the centralized ways of getting things done were not always going to, again, be able to meet our needs and bring about the transition that we all know is necessary in our society. And I started exploring other ways of, again, I'm going to keep saying it, but getting resources out to people. Some of the work I'm involved in now includes this kind of stuff. I'm also very interested in bioregionalism. I'm part of a bioregional network, Regenerate Cascadia. I'm part of a North Willamette Valley node. And one of the things that we're doing is building out a wiki. It's willamette.earth for kind of the whole Willamette Valley. And we're just kind of starting out as like a directory of resources for all the different regenerative work, organizations, places around our area, and hoping to build that up to, eventually, again, meet the needs of people. Again, when that anxiety hits me of like, damn, we have a lot to fucking figure out this century, I like to remind myself that in our communities, we have all of the people and all of the skills that create our society. We have the nurses and medics, we have the makers, we have the farmers, we have the coders. We have all these pieces, but we're relying on these other systems of organizing ourselves to get those needs met, needs and wants met.
We had a collective calendar and a number of other layers that I'll probably speak to later. And on this collective calendar, we had over 60 events that were hosted by different community members to really try and like see the whole of what was happening in the Boulder community and see it as more interconnected and interwoven. And so I'm someone who loves to play with collective culture and these games of like, how do we learn to be in deeper relationality with place and with one another through the process. I also am a part of a few different international or like more global networks, and we'll see if those feel more relevant to bring in later. But I was thinking about this idea of how there's like local based on geography, but then there's also local based on like shared values and like heart space. And I think it's fun to be in a room, and I feel like that was just kind of brought in at the start of like, we don't all live in the same place, but there's like this kinship that gets felt when you're together. And let's see, a story of place. I remember a moment that really helped me land here. I just moved to Colorado. This was over 10 years ago, and I was on my first solo camping trip in the mountains here, and was really just like caught by the beauty and the pull and that like sense of wonder that the mountains bring. And I remember I was like, can you just like hike to the top of a mountain? Like how does that work? Like I think I'm just gonna like go wandering and like see what happens. Just like the adrenaline and probably the elevation, and just found myself like a couple, probably a few thousand feet from where I had camped with just like this epic view. And I was like, man, I'm kind of like out here. Like, I don't know if anyone would be able to find me. I didn't actually tell anyone specifically. I'm like thinking of my mom and my family, and I'm like, I should be a little careful. And just remember feeling so like I had never felt a place really enliven my soul in such a dramatic way. And I think there's a lot of this sense of just the potential of like reaching for new vantage points and like seeing the for me it's like seeing the landscape and seeing the whole and seeing the interconnectedness of ecologies that I go back to that moment. So I ended up getting to like this epic view and finding this like shard of like a rope that someone else had used to like rappel down, and that was the moment I was like, this is probably good. I'm gonna turn around here, find my way back before dark. That was just like this like signal moment to my soul of like, this place has something really magic to offer, and I love getting to bring other people out into the wilderness and kind of find that sense of adventure together. So I'll pass it from there.
Thanks, Eileen. I can attest to the gifts that Eileen has brought this place in the last while that she's been here. I'm Savannah Kruger. I am a part of Cabin DAO, and as one of the DAO proposals I wrote, we started this thing called the Neighborhood Accelerator Program, which, but I think I'll step back for a second and say that I got involved doing this work in the Neighborhood Accelerator Program and Cabin because of my relationship to place. And it was basically when John, my partner, and I decided to move in together, and we fell in love, and we were like, let's build our nest. And we chose just over there by North Boulder Park, like 2 blocks from there, in Ideal Market. And we had our nest, and it was so like precious and beautiful and well designed and cozy. And yet, like, we're community people. We, he's done a bunch of like co-living, bopping around, and I've like lived in big hippie co-op houses and felt the joy of like always knowing that there's people around you who love you and are down to have that sappy trauma processing conversation and like dance because it's breakfast time. Like those beautiful moments were normal for the majority of my 20s. And so have always been fascinated with how community actually changes who we are. Like, I don't look out at a world where I see everyone feeling like they truly belong. It's not actually like a thing I'm seeing. And I really want to see that. Because I've had moments of my own that are like, oh my God, I'm showing up differently to this date, or I'm showing up differently to this work moment, or this leadership challenge, or this whatever. And like, the knowledge that there are people who are around me that love me in my immediate vicinity who do show up when something happens, it changes me. And so I'm just like excited about how human beings manifest differently in all moments of their lives because they have actively chosen or co-created more community. And so this manifests at Cabin because we're exploring all these different co-living, like network city type of projects. But more specifically in my work, I wanted to create a sense of community where we live in our neighborhood, right over there. And so we invited some of our friends to come move into our building. Is anyone familiar with Fractal in New York City? That's right, we talked about that. Yeah, and Venya, and so many others. So, and because I told you about it. Hello. Anyway, but the point is, there's all these beautiful people around the world who are taking it upon themselves to create a greater sense of community by either meeting their neighbors or hey neighbor, and getting their friends and the people they love to come live near them. Like, let's actually create the village by choosing each other over and over and over again. And so yeah, my work manifested as like, oh, how can I coordinate, using the terms that are alive in this room, like, how can I coordinate the people who already want this and help them actually go build it? And so at Cabin, I started this thing called the Neighborhood Accelerator Program, which is a 10-week course that kind of spits you off into like this network of people who are actually doing it and sharing knowledge, sharing wisdom, mentoring each other so that they can go create those villages themselves, because we can. And so yeah, to say it another way, like adding the social layer back into the existing physical infrastructure that we already have. So yeah, I'm into it, and I'm so excited to talk to you all. And I got to meet Nidhi through Cabin as well, and she's doing amazing work.
My connection to place, I was born and raised in Mumbai, and I would also see every time I walk out onto the street, it's a huge city, highly dense city. Whatever from the littlest actions that I do, like grab a vada pav from a street food stall to like taking the train or taking the auto rickshaw, my life is so interwoven and interdependent on what other people are offering. And so goes with all of the other people living in my city. And yet, there was that sense that of a distance, There is that sense of a distance between so many people in my neighborhood, the neighborhood I grew up in, and the friends I made in my city. So the reason I studied planning and I wanted to become an urban planner was to move urban planning from just the physicality of like designing a space and street design and things like that to actually building that social layer, building that community, and how cities can function more as an organism, like we're all different organs and we serve our own purposes, but we can't live without each other, and we have to act as one integrated organism. And I think that's what local coordination and everything is about, that just acting as one organism. So through my career, I tried doing that. I was working with the UNICEF. I helped with the nutrition program in West India and Maharashtra. I was in Auroville, which was a very interesting experience, and I hope to share more about my experience in Auroville. It's a self-governed city in South India. I was there for a year, and I did a research on governance in such a community and what it means to be part of a community that actually felt like everyone belongs, felt a feeling of belonging in that community. But there were very interesting learnings from that experience as well. And right now I work at Voice Deck with my husband Devansh, and we fund impact that citizens create on the ground using blockchain technology and things like that. So happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Hi, guys. I'm Cameron Murdock, and I grew up here in Boulder, and I work here at Riverside. And there's actually a legend of a curse in Boulder that if you fall in love here, you're stuck here forever. Speaking of a connection to place, so as omni-romantic, I'm 1,000 times cursed. Yeah. And yeah, I studied anthropology and evolution and stuff, and my come from is like, I just feel really sad and angry that people don't feel a sense of home and connection and purpose in the world, and through that journey of seeing the world and wanting to figure out how we can do things in a better way and get everyone what we need to feel good and feel in connection, and just have access to all the things that nourish the human spirit. I've really turned to technology recently. In 2020, we started a community here over at the stand next door, and we didn't want to isolate. We wanted to be in connection. So Richard was kind enough and principled enough to want his building used, even though we were being told a lot of things. So we popped about 7,000 vegetable seeds in the stand, and we planted them on a farm in North Boulder where I'd grown hemp the year before. I also, the year before, had created a hemp farmers cooperative, which fell apart because the weather at the end of the season ruined everyone's crops. There were a lot of reasons. The market also crashed. But we started this community, and we had big concerts in the parking lot and whatever distanced, and every Saturday still got together and had relating circles during the week and stuff. And at some point, we needed a way to track who had watered all the seeds that day. And so we built an app called One Boulder. And it's been quite a journey, but I'm now the director of the co-op that stewards that app, and we're called One Local now. And it's kind of similar to what we were just talking about at the start here, where you can post needs and offers and requests. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time distilling kind of the object model of coordination. And I think that there's like multiple parallels that we have to work on at the same time, which is like the in-person cultural coordination, just the practical resource coordination, local clearinghouses, who's producing what, how do we distribute that effectively, and then that leads into having effective technology. So that's me, and you're here.
Yeah, thanks for those answers. So I want to hear you all kind of get a little bit more in depth about the projects that you're working on and explain more about like what you're seeing or sensing as possible through this kind of local coordination work. You can start in any direction.
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit to this event that we hosted, bringing, to me, like at the heart of it, it's really helping people see the whole that they're a part of. So in Boulder, we have all these sub-communities. I'm sure this exists where you are as well. And, people drop deep into like the dance world or the meditation space, or, their social justice activism. And there's so much brilliance in this community. And so, but it doesn't always feel interconnected, and it doesn't feel like people are talking to each other. And so, yeah, through this event, we wanted to really like create this frame, this like 10-day space and time where it felt like the community was much more interconnected and activated. And through that, really just focus on relationships. To me, like so much of local coordination is actually just building relationships and helping the right people be in touch with each other. As I think about how to solve like the mutual aid network and how do resources flow in a community. One of the best technologies that we have are still just those of us who are those central hubs, right? Those like nodes in the mycology where a bunch of information is flowing. And so through, I'd say like one thing I noticed is just like continuing to get those people in connection with each other and also like bringing other people into like wanting to play that role in their communities and helping the web really see itself. So there's this map that we made that I have a few copies of in the back that was trying to like visually just speak to everything that's happening here and kind of give people a sense of like where are more of the doors that you can open in the community, right? That you can like step into and then be in touch. I've been doing so much organizing, but I really just like need to be in my body more, right? So like where are the doors that you can go like have that need met? And so yeah, I think my background is in education, and so much of what I see as like what we need to be doing is relearning how to be in community and repatterning ourselves so that we are these like collective players that are supporting the health of the whole more and helping those resources flow across networks and communities. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's like just continuing to come up with these experiments. I think like knowledge wikis are an amazing start, more mapping, more like just making sure that we're amplifying the brilliance that's already in the community and really spending a lot more time getting familiar with other people's work and what they're up to, and then bridging across those spaces is kind of like the place that I want more of us to be putting more of our energy, because I think that like interstitial space and helping bridge across is what needs to happen. And so yeah, through Woven Web, there's a few of us here who are anchoring that initiative. We're really thinking about what's the technology layers that we need to build, but also like what's the cultural patterning that we need to be practicing more and encouraging more in each other. So that happens on many layers. Hopefully that was specific enough.
That's great.
So in my experience in India, I've seen that decisions aren't taken closest to the people that they impact. And that is where, the root of the problem, everything begins and ends there. And I think I'd like to first point out 3 barriers that I've seen to local coordination that inhibits effective local coordination. One is a very like a state force, like there aren't institutionalized platforms for people to come and meet each other, participate, coordinate, discuss what they want and don't want. So, for example, in India, in cities in India under the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, board committees and area sabhas have to be constitutionalized, and that's what the Constitution says. But it's been more than 30 years now, and we don't have any of those platforms in place, none of them. So essentially, none of our cities, our citizens, none of us can go to any place and participate. So how that affects this whole local coordination is, even if people are coordinating locally, are taking, are maybe like changing few things on solid waste management projects, tree plantation, blah, blah, there's no feedback loop of those local initiatives leading to some broader state level, district level, block level initiative. So that it's just disconnected. So that's barrier number one. Barrier number two is like a market force, because we only have 24 hours in a day, and people have places to go and jobs to do and things to take care of and things like that. And that's actually a legitimate problem that people face, including myself. I don't turn up to my resident welfare association meetings on the Saturday of every month because I don't have the time. So that's one of the most, the second barrier. The third barrier is the society itself. I think this is what Auroville taught me. I really thought Auroville was like the answer to everything. I'm seeing shit happening in our cities. I'm going to like find this community and like, oh yes. And it was a great experience, but it also made me realize that even in a controlled environment, like if you think of this, an average Indian city as an experimental group and Auroville is a control group, even in such an environment where people are allowed to take decisions by themselves. In fact, it's a direct democracy system. Everyone has to vote and like plan their own city and do things by themselves. The society is diverse. It's not about divides as much as it is about diversity. And how does one handle that diversity? Because it's an international community as well, Auroville, with over like 40 nationalities. So people are coming in with different values. It's actually an OG pop-up or a DAO, like in my experience. It was. And so how do you deal with those divides and that level of diversity and still function as an organism and coordinate together? So I think those three are the barriers to effective local coordination, and I have seen silver linings in each of these in my experience. An example I can think of quickly is when I was working with the UNICEF in West India and Maharashtra, the government of India had designed this app, which is a mobile app, to help nutrition counselors on the ground who function in villages where I was stationed, to record the number of malnutrition children. So essentially, they have the greatest responsibility in India to track the number of, the state of malnutrition in this country. So it's also a very political thing, and the government of India had obviously designed this app without consulting any of the people who are actually going to use this app. And the worst part was there was a system, an app that was already being used and functioning extremely well, and exposing all of the realities of malnutrition and stuff in India. But they had discarded that and gotten this. And we were really, as program coordinators, we were kind of worried because we would get frantic calls from Anganwadi workers, these nutrition counselors, that we aren't able to use this, and it caused them a lot of anxiety. In all of this, there was this one Anganwadi worker, a nutrition counselor, who went on YouTube, started her own channel, became like an Instagram influencer by showing how to use the app, hand-holding, training and everything. And it was just such an amazing thing to see that, the wearer of the shoe knows where it pinches. And it was so nice to see that the solution or some sort of solution coming from the community itself and people gathering around that. So I always go back to that moment, and whenever I'm feeling like sad or anything, I remember that. And, I think there are those silver linings in all of these barriers that I just discussed. Yeah.
Can you remind me of the question? Our work something or other?
Yeah. Just like, what are you seeing and sensing?
Well, oh my God, just let Nidhi talk. Well, I had a thought when Cameron was talking about like what is the difference? What is the relationship between coordination and community? Are they the same? Can they be the same thing? Do they need to be the same thing? Like that, that thought came to me. And also, I'm feeling so inspired by what you just said. And I'm also just so appreciating, like, that, so many thoughts. Like, I love how, at first when you were speaking, I was feeling like, oh wow, like first world problems, like I'm coordinating like these fuckers who have so much of the things they need. And then I'm like, but we have coordination problems at every layer, in every zone of society. Like we get to support each other in figuring these things out, and we get to share the tools. Like, and I just, yeah. And I'm also feeling really, really struck by like fucking Ben Life and like the people in this room, and the fact that like so many of us, if not all of us, I think on a really deep level get that we're on this planet to make it a better place and solve problems. This isn't like a passive journey. I'm just feeling really struck by that, and feeling grateful for you all. Yeah, that's what I got.
I think it's really stupid that Jeff Bezos gets to own Facebook stocks, but I don't get to own stocks in Mustard's Last Stand. That's stupid. If we all owned a piece of everyone's thing, then we would all have each other's backs. And if we just know who has what and who needs what and who's going where when, then we can get all of us everything we need. We all have what we all need. So for me, finding ways to do that, and like in my assessment, the means of human coordination, I mean, first of all, language is the ultimate coordinating technology, right? It lets us say what is where, when, and who needs what, and everything like that. And there's actually really only like maybe 15 different object types that are needed in human coordination. We need groups, we need roles, we need to know people's skills and resources, we need to know their schedules. And so this is where like my work starts to tag in with the Web3 stuff, because what I want to see is something where we can get on there, see where I am, who's here, what are we doing, who's doing what, how can I contribute, and so that's like my come from in the tech that we're building, and in the tech that we're all building. Like, it's so interesting how Web3 has really figured out aspects of like staking and governance, but it hasn't really been brought down to the level of the everyday Mustard's Last Stand, right? So, yeah, so like groups, nested groups that have all the events in the group, and then ways of surfacing issues and proposals and voting on them, and then allocating stake, who did how much, job boards, group points. I got this many points in this group, that allocates my stake of the profit share. So this is kind of how I think, and I just wanted to share that we figured out something pretty cool recently from a lawyer who wrote the Limited Cooperative Association law in Colorado. And we discovered that if we set up a co-op where there's bona fide members of like true patron classes, maybe I'm a customer at Mustard's, maybe that's my membership class. If I'm a member of a patron class under this law, I can also buy financial shares of the co-op, and it's exempt from the SEC. So we've recently figured out this puzzle where if we set up as co-ops, I can own a share of Mustard's, and I don't have to be an accredited investor that makes $250,000 a year in order to do that. So that's something I'm seeing that I'm really stoked about.
Yeah. Awesome. So you all are some of you are along the spectrum of more of the human in-person collaboration spaces, and some are kind of more on the tech end, trying to bridge that towards community collaboration and human collaboration. What are the different either kind of governance, decision-making, or other community-building processes that you've been a part of or you enjoy using? Or if you want to go more on like the tech side, what tools do you see or use that you're interested in and want to kind of highlight?
I've got a quick one in terms of tech and tools. I saw a guy in San Francisco basically used AI to basically, like, he wanted to figure out what were the most advantageous introductions that he could make for the people at this conference. And so what he did is he like scraped the LinkedIn data of all the attendees, and then he had them answer a short form of like, who do you want to meet? Give me like 240 characters about your career and who you are, da 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 da. And then he put that into an AI model he built, and then spit out like, these 3 people need to meet, boop, 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 boop. And then he had scheduled breakfasts, lunches, and dinners to his conference, and that each of those pairings would go out and say, you're going to go out to eat here. Go hang out with these people, show up.
That's cool.
And they every single person was like, this was the best part of the conference because I met the people I wanted to meet and the people I didn't know I needed to meet. And of course, what I would add, and what I know we've talked about a little bit with the Woven Web folks, is like, also have the human layer of, you know, the Ben Life in that context, the Eileen in that context, be like, oh, who do I already know because I know their hearts and I know their work and I know that weird detail about them because we're friends, who should meet. And I just think that is one of the coolest applications of like technology and human technology to facilitate the beginning of a relationship that would then start all these other coordination dimensions. I want it to exist. And my new friend is saying that I can just go build it. Like, what? That's real, like with AI, like with ChatGPT tools. So, you know, the barefoot developer in me is going to make it happen.
Yeah, I think even at Edge City we had someone do a similar thing, if I remember right. The question on technology and the human coordination is something I'm still figuring out right now, because I'm torn between the fact that when humans coordinate, they coordinate on the assumption, on the foundation of trust, whereas in tech, we're here to create a trustless society. So I don't understand how to navigate that contradiction yet. At the same time, like, I've seen the strengths of what focus group discussions in villages can have, bring people together and everyone's in a circle and like discussing stuff. I've seen real good things come out of that. I've also seen very low participation in that, like only 1% turning up or no one turning up. Post-pandemic in India, WhatsApp has grown crazy and all the resident welfare associations are coordinating online now. So people don't meet face-to-face, but everyone's like super active on each of these WhatsApp channels, demanding like, let's create a neighborhood library, or let's try, the trash hasn't been collected on the street, so let's just put 2 bins ourselves by pooling in our own money. So that's a new thing that I'm witnessing. And with voice tech as well, I'm seeing the power that technology can have to actually provide a very unique imprint to the contribution that you have made in your community and incentivize you to like keep doing that, you know, because even the Lord needs praise. Praise be to the Lord. So even humans need praise, and humans need incentives to continue doing the work that they're doing, you know. So yeah, I think I'm curious at this stage, trying to explore this whole trust and trustless society and the human and technology coordination bit.
One of the most effective things that we did that really started building the community in 2020 was just having relating circles where we sat in a circle and we all said what's up for us right now and how we're feeling about it, and then listened to each other deeply and connected and responded. And ultimately out of those kinds of circles, there's like these shared wisdom channels that rise up, and then there's this sense of purpose and collective care that happens. And it kind of leads me into the notion that, like, you know, all the point of having all these resources, you know, food, music, spaces to use, is to actually bring all those things together and have the human experience of our social reality. And yeah, for me, like, that's primary. When that becomes primary, and then we can also like have a record of who contributed what in that context, and then that can be like a cool little status indicator or virtue signal that's a lot higher fidelity and more valid than whatever money you might have contributed or something. But yeah, for me, it's really like getting together, being together, bringing the resources together to share them and live life, and then the tech is really just a layer that scaffolds that, you know.
Yeah, that feels like a fun lead-in. I love to say that you need to fall in love with the people that you're going to keep organizing with, and yeah, like the more that you. There's this community called the Ecoversities Alliance that I'm a part of, and we spend at least half the time, sometimes more, of our calls just like checking in, right? Just like getting into that heart-centered space and really like knowing what's going on. So can't speak to that enough. But then, you know, yeah, there's so many online tools. I think for me, I think about surface area and I think about attractor points. And I almost like to think of it as like polyamorous organizing. You know, we're in Boulder, so hopefully there's enough knowledge in the room. But like, be really clear of like who are you in collaboration with, right? Like who are the people that you just like want to amplify and celebrate what they're doing and make that visible in your spaces. You know, so having a website that really speaks to like who you're in collaboration with. I love seeing people speaking into like the lineage of like, oh yeah, I'm like building off of this project and this collaborative and this alliance, right? And having that visible on whatever like digital spaces you have. And then, yeah, and being really generous about making introductions and interconnecting people. I feel like that's hopefully come through clear. Just one other thing. But yeah, then just like, I think like going on journeys together, for me, like, as an educator, I just like love learning, and so I think if you can put like really sense into like what is the thing that we're all chewing on right now, and then getting to like put that in the middle and learn together, I've seen that work really well for collaboratives, getting to like deepen into their relationships, and building together, of course, if you can, you know, get some like hacker time together and really just like go at something. I think that goes a long way too.
One of the things that I think we all really cohere around is the idea that it's really crucial to, as much as possible, make the social ecology visible and accessible. And you know, in Boulder, we've had several years now where I think a lot of different social organisms have kind of been gaining coherency. And we did an event a couple months ago, I don't know if you all know this, called Cohere. And that was really Eileen was huge in that. Aaron Gabriel, who's here somewhere, just brought a bunch of the social organisms together, and it was just so amazing how effortlessly that event went off. And the map that she pointed to Benya, who has a copy if you all want to see it at some point. But yeah, there's something about really making it visible, and that's also why what's happening tonight at Cosmo Local is like really dear to my heart, because I think we're in a stage where there's a lot happening, and the more that we can come into a coalition kind of vibe and do something that brings the attention in and shines a light and brings the resource into the community of people who are actually advancing the regenerative social ecology in the location is like everything to me when it comes to local coordination. Is like actually shining the light on the good things that are happening and bringing resource into that.
I thought of one quick thing, which is just when I think of surface area, like in the physical world, there's also this amazing, hopefully we all have food rescue efforts in our local communities, and Longmont is doing this cool like community fridges project where local churches or other like distribution sites, schools will have a community fridge, and anyone can go put food that you're not going to eat into this community fridge, and then people in the community who need food know to go look there, and they have like a way you can get notified if there's like a big like a grocery store distribution that's like brought there, and then I think you can use that like physical space, right? This place that people are going to then also cover it in like announcements and news and information, and kind of use that as like an information hub. But yeah, I wouldn't underestimate like physical surface area as a way to also bring in people that you aren't in contact with on the internet.
Yeah, the commons, totally. I just got excited and wanted to share. There's a woman named Tara Hunt in Carson, New Mexico, outside of Taos, and she's going to be joining the Neighborhood Accelerator program. And her project is to both be in this local chapter with a bunch of other humans in Taos, building community where they live. But she owns 40 acres of land, and she's just going to plant an edible food forest because she's just like, this is like the most clear, direct thing I can do to feed my community, and we can all do it together, and there's people excited about it. And it's like, it's just so cool. And then I sit there and I'm like, and I want our fucking neighborhoods to be covered in fruit trees that people actually harvest, that we can just be sharing with each other. And so it's just, yeah, to speak to the physical layer, like the commons actually can be the place where we meet our needs together, and that's so exciting.
Yeah, appreciate. There's been kind of some notes on trust and trustlessness. I remember back in 2022, James and I like sketching out on the back of like this booklet that we got from a professor in Portland that kind of studies bioregional transformation. But we were just kind of sketching like this, just at least the axis of like trust to trustlessness, and seeing trustlessness really being this like kind of global level thing. And as you get more local, and both like local physically and local just like from the heart space or community, more, yeah, socially, you don't need as much, or you need more trust. You need to be building that trust. So I kind of want to get at the shifts that we need to be making in our society, the shifts psychologically, the shifts philosophically, and the shifts culturally. Because we are very far from where we need to be, in my opinion, in those respects. So, yeah.
I can go. Yeah, I see a lot of shifts that I can like also just speak to in my own experience. One is like the lesson I've been learning and living in the last few months of just like, my life can't actually just be about productivity and output if I want to actually build the types of local communities that matter to me. Like I actually can't just design my life around that. And it sounds so like duh and bleak, but it's just it's the truth. Like, I think we've, as a society, just like completely over-indexed on work. Like, I love creating things. I love building things. I love like adding value in the world. But I think that started to, through remote work, through, you know, the infiniteness of the internet and what it asks of us. Like, we lose sight of that. Time is up, says here. But it's like, you know, it's just, I feel that shift in me, and I was really inspired by a woman named Shawnee Graham who lives in Australia, and she's built this, you may have seen, this incredible community of neighbors there called the West Beaky Bunch. And she wakes up at 5:30 in the morning and then like milks the goats in her urban farm, quarter acre of land in the suburbs that she's just completely transformed. And John and I were there for 2 weeks last month. And then at 6 o'clock in the morning, they have a cuppa. They have a cup of tea and a cup of coffee in the goat pen. They have a cup of, like, at 11, and then at 3, and then at 5. And it's like, they just stop. They stop working. So I'm really feeling a shift in me that's just saying, like, no one is literally going to tell me to stop except me. I have to cut my own like productivity off at a certain point and be like comfortable with that, to then reorient to the well-being of like making time and space to hang out with human beings, and not just hang out, but like invite and initiate and be in common spaces so that I can have those little spontaneous moments with humans. Because like that doesn't, like that amazing tweet is like also a spontaneous moment in a more like, you know, spread out context, but it's not the same as like, I was there for you because like you couldn't carry all your groceries to your car. Like, you know, so I'm really just feeling that shift these days of actually making space and time for the ideas we're talking about today manifesting in our actual relationships. And also courage. Like, we have to like be willing to be the person who's literally initiating a different culture in our social interactions. Like, it's the skill of facilitation. It's the skill of like courage, authenticity. But it's like, I'm willing to be a little weird to invite you into a deeper moment than we would have if we were just dicking around like passively. And yeah, like that feels really tender and precious and special. It's just like these initiating moments of greater intimacy with platonic humans, like feels so rich. So yeah, I think those are like the skills that I'm cultivating and like excited to see others cultivate, so that, yeah, we can have more love in our everyday social interactions.
Yeah, I think super resonating with that. Just creating a culture of like post-productivity, post-transactionalism, finding ways to actually like connect in the real ways that all the trappings of society force us into, and like, I mean, and there's like different layers or domains of this. Like, you can be in a frame of partnership in the energetic realm, but also in the financial realm, still in the frame of like dividing up the pie. And then there's like, I mean, there's the layer of actual like property assets and ways of, you know, offshoring properties with constitutional churches, or trying to actually get properties out of the assessor's map so it's now land instead of property. And yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to look at how to get past the things that have really held us in. And also there was something in your question about like how to make it was a question about trust and trustlessness. So I think it's good structurally if you can create a context where we trust each other, and there's a way to like, what am I saying? I think you can get past the need to trust or not trust because the context is just so cohesive that it becomes a non-issue because you're in connection. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I was just saying, like, what it sounds like you were creating is trust. The like relaxing into not being worried about someone might hurt me or take from me. Like, you could just create trust. And it's not that simple, right? But it's like I think another skill, another behavior is like to give first, to be the one to love someone first, to say like, yeah, I want to hang out with you and I don't know you, or like because we're close to each other, so like I'm gonna see you, like let's matter to each other, you know, to like one of my favorite things is like scheming to get one of the people in my apartment building to like do something really sweet for another person in my apartment building, and like look like I had nothing to do with it. And then like Alicia like loves baking, and whenever there's a moment I'm like, oh, like this person just had such a horrible thing happen, like we should bake them something, and then and then she does it, and it's awesome. Yeah, so anyway, but yeah, like that we can initiate cultures of greater safety and trust by like being a safe person, like giving a shit. Like I'm saying this and it's so obvious, and I know you all understand, but it's those moments of like, you know, like one of my neighbors, like I was carrying something that was way too heavy for me to be carrying and like breaking my back in the parking lot, and he looks out the window and he rushes out and helps me, and he like has never spoken English to me. It's always been like I can hear him like speaking a Slavic language, and then eventually he does speak English. He just doesn't want to talk to people. But like, he's a sweetie. Yeah, but like, you know, that was such a moment of care, just out of nothing, because he cared. That then I watched my shoulders drop, and I was like, wow, like that's it. That's all this is. So yeah, being the one to initiate a loving connection, I think, is like so huge. And we would do it with the intimacy of a friend. I think, and there's something to it of like, you know, can we cultivate the quality of safety and trust and love within ourselves in a fucking world that is not safe all the time also, but still move towards that so that we can create more of that safety and trustworthiness for others. That's like the fucking spiritual practice here. Hey?
Yeah, I think both of you all touched on like two of the core philosophies that Sri Aurobindo, the founder of Auroville, has, and one of them being divine anarchy. It's a heavily loaded word and term, and highly abused in Auroville itself, because people have started using divine anarchy as a way to say that we don't need any sort of control or centralization or any sort of coordination or supervision at all. We can do whatever we want in our lives. So in my limited knowledge of what I to understand of that word is it's a very beautiful way in which my professor, the one I was working with, explained this to me is a stone, though an inanimate object, carries in itself that an energy or an element that can make it live, like can make it like grow into something else. So it's at surface level, we feel like that stone, you know, it can't ever grow into something else. It's inanimate. It's going to be like that. But it does have that power to become an animate object. It can become an animal or anything. And Sri Aurobindo believed that humans in themselves have that divine element to become something that's not human. I mean, that's to say someone who initiates love, you know, someone who feels empathy for another person, who's kind. And we all have that element in us, you know. We don't have to like search elsewhere. We can dig into ourselves and feel that. And in that context, divine anarchy is when everyone feels a sense of being human, and therefore, like, you know, not having to feel that we need someone else to control us, because our conscience is controlling ourselves. It's guiding us, individually and collectively as an organism, as a society. And I think there's something very beautiful in that, and both of you all really touched on those things. So it's very interesting that these ideas, it doesn't matter what nomenclature you use, but it's just the essence of it that really matters. And I think that cultivating that in the demand side, that is the community, the societies that we all live in, is a huge feat, and that's why I appreciate Cabin's work so much, because you all are really doing something so fundamental with the neighborhood, with NAP. You all are not napping at all. You all are super active and, touching on that empathy, because coordination can only happen on that foundation of empathy and kindness and care. At the same time, I feel the supply side, we all live in societies with governments, we are dependent on them. Like, no matter how much my community decides to pool in resources and buy some garbage bin or, plant trees or whatever, some official from a municipal corporation, and Irtu is here, he's also from Bangalore, and he can attest to that as well. Like, some municipal officer will come and remove that, or all of your effort has gone to waste. So how do we deal with that supply side? How do we deal with a government that's everything opposite to whatever we're cultivating in our communities? It's selfish, it's political, it's not everyone is like that, obviously, but politics just make you like that. And I feel there, to me, Web3 really offers that sort of changed formula. I was really tired of using the same formula. I was working with governments and going the structural route and advocacy, policy advocacy, and doing all of that. It's the same thing that people before me, 30 years before me, have done, and with zero results. And here you have a technology that uses decentralization beyond its rhetoric. Decentralization is no more rhetorical. It's an actual bloody technology. You can use it. And so in my research, like Estonia, and there are so many other countries that are using blockchain very effectively in their governments to promote a transparent government. At the end, people just want to see everything transparently. Okay, this is the money going to this, and with my money, with my taxpayer money, this is what they built out. It's as simple as that. Problems are simple. And I hope, and I think I also see Web3 UI becoming a little more user-friendly for all of these things to actually be integrated in government offices and departments. And so that from the demand and supply side, we have a society of trustlessness, where, everyone trusts in themselves, and therefore our politicians are also secure in themselves. And yeah, we can all dream. There's no tax to dream, so let's dream. Thank you.
Huge fan of dreaming and creativity and rekindling the innate human genius that is our creative potential. Just briefly, I thought, there's a number of things that have been spoken to and that came through. I feel like the narrative that we're all living into is one of individualization and we need this and scarcity. And so for me, there's this love to play with how can we write a new narrative, one that honors our entanglement and our interconnection. And so getting to practice that together. And I think a lot about schools as someone who works in education and how there's so much of that culture in schools, at least in this country, of productivity that you were talking about on programming, and and competition, and just propelling yourself forward. And so one of my dreams, and something I work towards, is that more students get to play outside of the walls of their classrooms and get to learn outside of their classrooms. And so my challenge to folks in this room would be, how can you bridge into schools in your area and get kids dreaming and playing with you in what we're co-creating, so that we can both help them break out of what they understand to be possible, and also have them learn civic engagement through some of the beautiful things that we're all caring for in our communities. So let's do that, more of that.
Question, yeah. Thank you. I'm going to ask one more quick question. And I'll ask you guys to limit your answers to maybe 30 seconds, but it should be pretty easy. Yeah. So one of the frameworks that's extremely informative to me is collective liberation. The way I look at it, there's a tribe that's kind of in the Portland area that looks at 5 levels or layers, and that you can kind of look at the a spectrum from oppression to liberation. Obviously, there's no true ends to those, but it's 5 levels of the internal, the interpersonal, the group or organizational, the structural or systemic, and then the ideological. And I think here we get, maybe not trapped, but we kind of like to float up, talking about systemic change and ideological change and even organizational change. But I just kind of wanted to ask you all, what are you doing to take care of yourselves?
I'll circle that back around. For me, like playing in wild spaces is a huge part of it, and also getting hands on the earth. So it's getting to be planting, growing season, and just being in connection with food that's being grown locally is a huge part of that. So hanging out with Masa Seed Foundation more this spring.
For me, it's dancing. And yeah, and when I think about liberation, a few friends in this room and I go to this thing called movement mass on Sunday mornings. And if you're not here, you should be there because it's fucking awesome. And yeah, there's a point in this undulating, like, giant group of 200 people dancing to, like, incredible music and, like, letting each other just be our full selves, like, to weep or to scream or to be completely in jubilation is, like, on the dance floor. And it does feel like liberation at a really deep level and a mutual collective unfolding. And, like, yeah, there's this peak where, like, everyone's just screaming their face off. It's like deep rage of processing what life is, or like your thing with your dad, or like the fucking moment took you, you know? And, like, yeah, so dancing for me.
Thanks for that question, because I got a reality check a month ago. I had this problem in my wrist and a spondylitis at the age of 31. So it sort of made me pause and, like, rethink how much time we've been spending online and on the laptop. And now I've rejoined my classical music lessons, so Indian classical music lessons. So that started like 2 weeks ago, and I'm very excited about that. And I like spending time with my husband.
I don't do stuff I don't want to do. I'm not here to have a bad time. And if stuff feels like a burden, it should be as easy as breathing. This is life. We're here to live. So that's my biggest piece.
Cool. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to the panelists.